ASTROWORLD is the long-awaited album from Travis Scott. This album's been like a talking point for about 2 years. I'm pretty sure as soon as Birds came out, this album was being talked about. It feels like it's been that long anyway, which is actually a really good marketing ploy. I mean, this album, the word ASTROWORLD has been on everyone's lips since like 2016, it's a pretty good way to get people hyped, isn't it? He's probably learned some marketing skills from Kanye West, I must admit. I mean, to be honest, Birds was a pretty bad follow-up to Rodeo in my opinion, so I'm very surprised that it was so hyped up to begin with, because after Birds I was like, nah, Travis ain't got it anymore. Rodeo was the fluke. I did really like Rodeo, that's the thing. It's not like I'm just being over-exaggerating there. Like, I do think Rodeo is that good of an album, to the point where I just don't know if he can really come close to that ever again. And even if he wanted to come close, he might just not really feel like he wants to make an album like that anymore, which is totally fine. I mean, an artist is an artist, you don't want to just you want to progress. You don't want to keep making the same thing over and over again unless you're like AC/DC. So yeah, I was pretty skeptical going into ASTROWORLD, I must admit. An hour-long album, 17 tracks. Yeah, Rodeo was a little bit longer than that, but I just didn't really have the right feelings going into it. I thought it was just going to be bloated, dragging on. I just didn't really feel like this was going to be a great album. And to be honest, in my opinion anyway, I don't think it is close to being a great album. I will praise Travis though for making some production choices that were pretty creative and pretty unique to his sound. I mean, there are some ideas on here that I wasn't expecting him to go for, and some pretty odd sounding instrumentals that I want to praise him for trying something different. In a way, it's like A$AP Rocky's Testing, in the sense that, A$AP was trying to, change things up with every track and did something unique every time, but in the same way as Testing, it kind of doesn't work most of the time. It occasionally does work, but the times where it doesn't work, it's very noticeable and just grates my ears, to be honest. The opening track is a very good example of that. I think his voice, the auto-tune that he's using, sounds terrible. I don't think anything's mixed very well together in the beat. I don't know, I just don't think the beat sounds right. Something about it that just sounds so off to me. Carousel incorporates Frank Ocean's vocals in a way I don't think particularly works. I think Frank sounds very out of place there, to be honest. It's not the instrumental that he would typically go with, and it just rides in a really bumpy way that I can't enjoy. Now, Frank Ocean is one of the many features on this album. This album just bloats us with feature after feature after feature, and again, it just, to me, shows a lack of versatility in what Travis has to offer, because he's so reliant on these random guest stars that often either add to the song in a pretty well way, but quite a lot of the time they don't give us much in the way of anything. 21 Savage is the perfect example of that. Just does his own usual thing. It doesn't exactly sound out of place, but it's just really a moment that passes by and leaves no impact. Drake comes through on Sicko Mode. This song has like 3 sections to it, and none of it really comes together in any way that I could ever praise. Like, it starts off with Drake, and then it comes into a different moment where Travis is rapping, and then it goes back at the end with Drake. Like, it all just meshes together so badly to me. And then when it gets back to Drake at the end, he decides to tell us about how he's taking Xanax so he can sleep through a flight. Like, the guy is trying so hard to make a mundane verse even more mundane as he goes along in his career, I swear to God. It's a real shame that the first moment on this album that I genuinely enjoy is the 4th track, which is R.I.P. Screw, which features Sway Lee. Sway Lee on features often brings a nice sonic palette to the table, because his singing is quite interesting, and I think it really works with the production here. It sounds really nice. But then later on we get tracks like Skeletons, which is a very short interlude type track, which has Travis, rap singing in a really boring way, to be honest, just telling us things that I don't care about. And then The Weeknd comes through, and then the song directly after that, The Weeknd is there again, and it's just like, okay, why again? And it's funny because Skeletons isn't particularly that great of a song, but like Wake Up is a better version of what Skeletons could have been. So it's like they took one take and thought, now we'll do this again, and then they decided to make Wake Up, and then instead of just cancelling out Skeletons, they just kept both anyway. Just a really weird moment because it just felt like it was all one song, but then you find out that it's not, and it's just a bit random. I don't really get it. Skeletons also features production from Pharrell Williams and Tame Impala, which is such an odd mix to me. Like, I think Travis is a bit out of his depth on some of these production choices. Like I said, you know, it's creative in one sense, but it doesn't really always work out, and that's just a good example of where it doesn't really work. But you know what, as negative as I am being, I did go into this album thinking if I can take a couple of songs away from it, you know, I will be happy. But I did probably come out with like 5 or 6 songs that I genuinely do like. So if this album was cut to like an EP, or maybe even like one of those 7-track good music albums that's been going around lately, it probably would have worked. No Bystanders is this dumb as hell banger that just gets me hyped up, man. I freaking love this track. It's fuck the club, bro, bitch, fuck the club, bro. And even though it has like no substance to it whatsoever, I just think it works so well as a banger. I don't know how and why this featured here, because it just doesn't really feel like it's in place in this album, but it's so good. I do like 5% Tint as well. Like, this has got a really good sample in the song, and I think it works really well, and Travis is doing his rap sing thing, and it's one of the few times where it works, in my opinion, on this album. And the reason I say one of the few times is because once we get past like track 10, this album just dies. The beats become so inspired on tracks like Yozmai, if that's how you even say it. Tracks like Can't Say. Like, Travis is just rapping on these songs, and I don't really know why he's the sole focus of these tracks, because the production at this point is like completely pointless. Like, none of the beats are worth your time, and that's not really something that ever works in his favour as an artist. Anyone that knows Travis Scott well knows that he's not lyrical, and his best assets are in his production choices, and also how he manipulates his vocals in a really interesting way and can often be very melodic, and he crafts a really cool atmosphere with the way he does it. And all of that is just not here in this second half. Like, there's no purpose to these songs. Like, if I wanted to listen to Travis rap, I would say no, because he's not really that great of a rapper. So why is this half of the album focusing on that? Like, it just doesn't work. He's not lyrical, and he's not really good at coming up with interesting content. So why is that the focus of this part of the album? Just a waste of time. I mean, why did we need this? I don't think it was necessary. Like I said, this album could have been chopped completely to half the length easily. It's so funny as well how like Who What is basically the same song as Butterfly Effect. Like, there's hardly anything that changes these songs up at all, and they're slapped next to each other. Like, so it just makes it look even more lazy, the fact that they sound the same and they're just next to each other. Like, if you'd have put Who What at the beginning of the album and then Butterfly Effect at the end, it might not have been so bad, but they just sound the same. It's like the whole Weeknd thing right all over again, you know? These two tracks just have no real reason to be next to each other or even be a part of the album, but they're there anyway. I'd say Houston Fornication is probably the one track at the end of the album that I would genuinely say is pretty decent. I don't know why or what it is. He's doing the same thing he's been doing on previous tracks, but I guess it may be the way he's rapping that sounds a little bit better. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like as an artist, Travis has just not learned anything from Rodeo. Like, that was how he made his best music, and he's just strayed away from it completely. I don't really know why. He's not really producing his own tracks anymore. Metro Boomin is nowhere to be seen on this album, and that's also not really good for the production most of the time. He's getting people like Tame Impala, like, that just don't really have any reason to be here. Like I say, I praise his creativity. I praise that he's doing something different and a bit adventurous, But it honestly feels quite lazy, the overall experience. Like I said, especially that second half, I feel like no effort was put into that at all. To me, this album seems like it's been hyped up for so long for a marketing ploy, you know? It's a way to sell the album, get people hyped. But actually, in reality, he hasn't really been working on it for very long. It seems that way anyway. But yeah, I mean, I can't really say I'm positive on this because there's too many tracks here that I don't think are worth my time. Like I would say 5 or 6 at the most, which is pretty good. You know, I can take 5 or 6 and create my own mini EP, which I probably will on my Apple Music library. But yeah, that's not really worth calling this a good album, though, is it? I mean, 17 tracks, I take away 5. It's not a really good rate, is it? So yeah, based on that, I'm really gonna have to go 4.5 out of 10. I know it's really negative, but there are positives to take away. There's just not enough, really. So that's why I'm in the negative side of this album. Yeah, there are really so many tracks that just aren't memorable at all. And to me, that's really bad because I think Travis can make a really good album. But to be honest, at this point, I think Rodeo may have been a fluke. But that's just what I think anyway. Do let me know your thoughts. I think this is a waste of potential, really, this album, but I know a lot of people are loving it, so let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews if you like this. Have a good day, and yeah, I don't know, just yeah.